Hello, everyone. I'm Kailey with Henry Ford SandCastles, and joining me today is Holly, who was our MSW student intern for this past school year. Thank you, Holly, so much for joining me today. I wanted to give everyone a chance to get to know you a little bit better, and so I'm going to ask you some questions about your experience with SandCastles and with children in grief over the last year. So to start, would you let us know a little bit about how you learned about sandcastles?
Yeah, absolutely, Kaylee, and I'm happy to be here. So, I did not actually know about sandcastles prior to starting my social work program at Wayne State. It was my school advisor who introduced me to sandcastles. They knew I had experience volunteering with hospice, and I have an interest in grief work. I also have experience working with the geriatric community, so I was looking forward to working with kids. So this was kind of the perfect placement for me. Um, and that's how I learned about sandcastles.
That's fantastic, and we were so happy to have you with us this year. Um, and I'm curious, what is it about Sandcastle's mission that appeals to you personally?
I'm personally drawn to the fact that sandcastle services are completely free for all families. Grief is something that everyone will experience at one point in their life. It's such a natural thing that often counseling for grief is overlooked, but unprocessed grief, especially in children, can be a risk factor for many negative physical and psychological outcomes later in life. So Sandcastles does a great job removing barriers for local Detroit residents in need of quality grief support. And also, Sandcastle's mission to provide quality community based peer support for grieving families is also extremely valuable. Grief can be very lonely, and especially for children, it can be isolating when they might not know anyone who's experienced a death. The Sandcastle's peer support structure allows children to be around other kids who are going through similar grief experiences. So it makes them feel less alone and potentially they can make new friends.
Most definitely. We love the relationships that are built through our program, and we're glad that you saw the benefit of that as well, hands-on as a student with us. And how has your work at Sandcastles had an impact on your life?
It's had a really positive impact on my life. So, I actually experienced grief at a young age when my dad died, and I never received any grief support or counseling until I was an adult. So, working with Sandcastles, it's shown me the positive impact that programs like this can have on grieving children. I've learned the importance of processing grief in a healthy and also a very timely manner. And also, working with Sandcastles has allowed me to experience so many incredible moments in families' grief journeys and in the world of grief work. So, overall, my experience with Sandcastles has given me more direction in where I want to go in my social work career path.
Oh, that's so great to hear. And so at Sandcastles, as I'm sure you've learned over your time here with us, there are a lot of misconceptions about grief and grieving children. And it's just kind of a field that there's not a lot of research yet and time devoted to. So, what would you say, in your opinion, is the biggest misconception about grieving children? And why do you think they're an important part of the community to dedicate your time to?
Most definitely. I would say the biggest misconception is that all grieving children act out or they misbehave in some way or they're sad all the time. On the flip side, children who are behaving normally must not be affected by the death or they have grieved properly. That's definitely not the case. Many children won't talk about their grief or how they're feeling because either they simply don't know or they don't feel comfortable sharing. Many adults even struggle with processing their feelings, so it's understandable for a child to as well. When it comes to grief, avoiding it does not make it go away. Unprocessed grief will eventually come back to affect them as adults and could have a negative impact on their life's trajectory. So, just because a kid may seem normal does not mean that they are not affected by the grief. And Children are the future, in my opinion. They grow up to be active and engaging citizens in our world and our economy, and it's important that we set them up for success. So, providing children with the tools and resources when they're young to help them process their grief will give them an advantage and be able to deal with all the hard things that life will eventually throw at them as they become an adult.
Absolutely. And speaking of dedicating your time to our mission here at SandCastles to supporting grieving children, what is your favorite thing about volunteering at SandCastles?
I'd say my favorite thing is definitely working with the kids and getting to see just a full range of emotions from the children. It could be from somber with tears to happy with laughter. Um, you get to see so much with these kids, and you also see how resilient and how smart these kids are, and it really gives me hope for the future.
I definitely feel the same way, in my work with SandCastles, that resiliency is so inspiring to get to see firsthand when you're working with those kids. So I completely agree with that. And I want to end here with one final question, which is what advice would you give to those considering volunteering their time with SandCastles, or maybe to people considering donating a gift to SandCastles? What would you tell them?
I would say that it's well worth your time and you definitely will not regret it. Grief work can for sure be tough at times, but it's absolutely worth it when you see just how impactful this program has on these children's lives.
Well, I want to thank you so much for hopping on here with me today and sharing a little bit about yourself and your experience with us here at SandCastles. I know I speak for everyone on our team when I say that we wish you the very best in your continued ventures here towards getting your social work degree. And we appreciate all that you've given us and the kids in our program over the last year that you've spent with us here. So thank you so much, Holly. We appreciate you so much and wish you the very best.
Thank you, Kailey. That means a lot, and it has been such a pleasure.